Hello, greetings from Jordanville, from Holy Trinity Seminary on the feast of Holy Prophet Elijah. And I just thought it's a good opportunity today to speak about the Russian Church abroad and Mount Athos. Uh, in 1923, when the Ecumenical Patriarchate adopted Julian calendar, many people of God, men of God on Mount Athos, were confused because previously the papal calendar adopted by Pope Gregory in the end of the 16th century was considered unacceptable for the Orthodox Church. There was special document, special sigillion issued by the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and now it finally was adopted. So it became a cause of turmoil. And some Russian fathers, some Affonite fathers of the Russian descent, wrote to Metropolitan Anthony and had correspondence with Metropolitan Anthony Kharpovitsky asking for his guidance in this issue. And Metropolitan Anthony Kharpovitsky, he was not happy with all those renovations, but at the same time he believed it was not really a justified cause to breach communion with the Ecumenical Patriarchate. One of those fathers was Hieros Hieromonk Theodosius, about whom you may find materials on my website. If you go to clergy and monastics, you will find material about him written by Archbishop Seraphim of Chicago, the late Archbishop Seraphim of Chicago. At the same time, also many clergymen and faithful of the Greek Church were scandalized, and they stopped ecclesiastical communion with the Greek Church, but no bishop at that point followed them, so they were headless, and they became nucleus of the later Old Calendarist movement within the Church of Greece. So the Russian diaspora worked hard to support Russian communities on Mount Athos since before the World War I. It was quite populous, but in 1913 there was also a very divisive issue about proper veneration, or as the Russian Synod qualified it, name worshipping, which was connected with teaching about proper attitude towards the name of Jesus. As a result, I think we're talking about from 300 monks were taken over by force to Odessa, and it also became a very strong blow to the Russian Athos. And after the revolution, people from Russia could not travel there. Some people from the Russian diaspora went there and settled there. But we are talking about 100 cells. We are talking about 1,000 monks. The Russian monastic population was the most significant on the Mount Athos. So, in this situation, after World War II, the major monastery, St. Pantelemon's Monastery, petitioned the Church of Russia to send young monks in order to preserve the monastery in the Russian hands. Because once monastery becomes depopulated, this monastery comes to attention of the Parliament of Mount Athos Synod, and they basically may reassign this monastery. And in this case, very unlikely that St. Pantelemon's Monastery would remain Russian, and that will be huge loss, because it's an ancient monastery and has been connected with Russian church, with Russian monks for centuries. So that's how they sorted this issue in St. Bartholomew's Monastery. In 1960s, Frost monks came from the Soviet Union. At the same time, there were two other places, St. Elijah's Skid and St. Andrew's Skid. So they decided not to ask for any help from the Soviet Church. They wanted to be supported by the Russian emigres. And the three mentioned monasteries, three ancient monastic communities had also a property in Istanbul. So they had houses that they use for churches, and at the same time they use those houses to rent out property, and at the same time and getting some income to support themselves. So those houses were erected in the late 1850s in the Christian quarter of Istanbul that is called Galata. And now the only house of St. Bartholomew's Monastery survived as an affiliation of the Russian Church, and two other skids, they lost their property. I mean, I think now they went under Fanar. They belong to Fanar. Okay. And St. Andrew's Skid died out in 1960s, and it's still depopulated, so unfortunately. And St. Elijah's Skid was more lucky in this sense. The older abbot, Father Nikolai, who used to be there, I understand, from pre-revolutionary time, he died in 1970. At the same time, an abbot was elected, and this abbot became Father Serafim Babic, who is still alive in Holy Land in the Russian Ecclesiastical Mission of the Russian Church abroad. He became an abbot, and his official position was not to commemorate the ecumenical patriarch, because the ecumenical patriarch removed anathemas evoked in 1054, and also because the skid, St. Elijah's Skid, was very much dependent on zealots, on the monks on Holy Mount, who also didn't want to have anything to do ecclesiastically with Fanar. So the situation continued from 1970s until 1992, and in 1992, as the official representative of the Ecumenical Patriarch came, and they asked whether the name of the Ecumenical Patriarch was commemorated, and the answer was no, and therefore police got involved and removed all residents from the place and take them to Daphne, to take them to Ranopolis, probably, right? Not Daphne, it's a local Mount Athos port. Ranopolis, it's already on the Greek part, it's outside of Mount Athos. And that's how the Russian presence ended there on Mount Athos. And for those decades when Father Serafim was, when the Russian Church abroad main presence ended, there was also a cell that was called Buizerki, which is corrupted Russian name coming from Белое озеро, where future Bishop George of Canberra used to be a monk, and a number of other brethren who came from the States, and they were spiritually connected with the Russian Church abroad. It was in the 1980s. And St. Elijah's Skid was heavily supported by the Russian community, Russian Church abroad community in the 1970s, 1980s. Even Russian Church abroad bishops would encourage commemoration at that time. But nevertheless, that what the abbot decided, and another monk who was an official of a night monk, because there were only two monks who were officially registered on Mount Athos. The rest of them were just residents. They had status sort of within the Russian Church abroad, but according to the Athonite law, a number of people, like we're talking about 5-7 people who were removed from that place, only 2 of them present Father Seraphim, and him among John, who used to live in Jordanville very long time ago, and he is now living in St. Cyprian and Justina's monastery, part of the Synod of Resistance and All Calendaris Synod, in a suburb of Athens. So, and that basically settles this subject, right, regarding the presence of the Russian Church abroad on Mount Athos. Thank you.